First of all, there, I'm convinced that the human element is missing.
What do you mean?
Somehow, we were so involved there, both sides are so involved in trying to defeat the other politically or militarily that the human element is missing. I would like to go there and see how people live there. Have they elected their regime free, yes or no? If they have not, then we have all the right in the world to say we don't recognize that regime. But if the people did elect freely the communists or the Sandinistas or whoever they are now, then what can we say? But on the other hand, one generation ago, remember, I don't like comparisons with the past, but we have to make some comparisons on certain levels. Hitler was elected freely. Waldheim was elected freely in Austria. So elections, again, which are the expression of democracy and the noble freedom of a people. Even elections can point to the wrong direction.
Therefore, in the mix, in the political mix, when the result, even through majority rule, does not point in a moral direction, what position must we take?
Oh, I think that we, who are, after all, teachers, writers, we should have the courage to speak up against. Who is a writer? A writer is someone who says no. No to the system, no to the surroundings, sometimes even no to God.
Who believes there is a higher law?
Not a higher law, but at least a higher voice. That means a writer may say, no, I don't accept it. And because I'm a writer, because I'm a teacher, I'm a philosopher, or an artist, I may say, I don't accept the way things are running. I know it doesn't make much sense, because who am I to say to presidents or vice presidents or senators how to run the country? I know nothing about it. But although I don't know anything about it, I have the right to say, no, I don't like it.
Of course, we've experienced recently in this country examples of people who say no, do not tell the truth, do not obey the laws. I was thinking of Iran Gate and the hearings there, with the notion that, although you reject the notion of higher truth, with the stated view of a higher truth.
Yes, but it is to the credit of our country that we have unmasked these people, and they have been unmasked. And I don't like what they are doing. I didn't like what they were doing then. We come from a tradition, the Jewish tradition, which I praise because I find it so noble and so comforting. The kings, the most powerful people in the country, had to obey the law. And if they did not obey the law, the prophet, who represented nobody, came and told them that they were wrong and criminals, and they were bad kings. Now, in Rome, in ancient Rome, when an emperor died, all the laws were abolished, because all the new laws had to be ascribed to him. This was not true in the Jewish tradition, the Jewish history. Kings, if they disobeyed the law, they were chastised by prophets. And in any other country, the prophet would have been beheaded right away. Who are you to speak to the king like that? And yet all these prophets came to the king and said, no, the law is the law, and no one is above the law. And therefore, when here in Washington, we found people who were above the law, they were wrong. Luckily, there were people who said so, that they were wrong.
You know, one of the thoughts that has occurred to me as I thought about this further meeting of ours had to do with a piece that you wrote about another nation. It was the piece you wrote in the New York Times on September 6th, when hatred seized a nation, about the Dreyfus affair. An extraordinary recounting of what happened in that nation, an extraordinary recounting of the viciousness of anti-Semitism. At the very end, and I promised myself when I read that first that the next chance I had, I would ask you about it.
Could have called me.
I could have called you, but then others would not have learned. You wrote at the end, I cannot conclude this text without recalling Theodor Herzl, who, as a correspondent for a Viennese paper in France, witnessed the ceremony in which Dreyfus was degraded. He heard the shouts of the anti-Semites crying out for death. It was at this point, according to the legend, that the assimilated writer decided that assimilation was not a valid theory. It was at this point that he decided to found the Zionist movement, in the midst of an anti-Semitic nightmare, he began to dream of a Jewish state. Now, you were doing more than concluding the piece there.
Of course, of course. Well, first of all, I think I celebrate Jewish history here. It has extraordinary imagination and sometimes a sense of irony. Here you have a meeting or a non-meeting between two assimilated Jews who wanted nothing better than to be assimilated and accepted by the Gentile society around them. Herzl was an assimilated Jew who worked for the very famous newspaper from Vienna. Dreyfus didn't even know that he was persecuted as a Jew. The irony of it all. And yet there was that moment of encounter, and two assimilated Jews meet, and the result is a Jewish state. And I find it extraordinary. There is a marvelous anecdote which I must tell you too. Sigmund Freud was from Vienna. Theodor Herzl was from Vienna. Apparently both of them lived in the same street, a few houses apart, at the same time. And they never met. Now, imagine Theodor Herzl knocking on the door and say, Dr. Freud, I have a dream.
Do you think it was a dream that should have been realized or analyzed?
Oh, if I have a choice, of course, realize. For 2,000 years we were waiting for that dream, but it had to come from an assimilated Jew.
But when you have sat at this table before, there have been times when you have been unhappy and expressed your unhappiness about what has happened or has been happening in Israel. Do you feel less so that way today?
Oh, I'm unhappy because of the world, not only Israel. Of course, I love Israel with all my heart, and therefore occasionally it hurts. No question of unhappiness. It hurts when I don't see Israel the way I would like Israel to be, meaning happy, at peace, and more human than other nations, more prophetic than other nations, certainly. But I would like every nation to feel that way. I would like a Frenchman to feel that about France, an American about America. That is probably the meaning of the concept of the chosen people, meaning that every people is chosen, every person is chosen, every human being is the image of God. So since I'm close to Israel, I said it about Israel. But I can tell you, with all the problems that Israel has, thank God for the problems. That means thank God for Israel and the problems that Israel carries. If I have a choice, Israel with problems, or no Israel, of course I would choose Israel with all the problems in the world.
And how does that relate to your feelings about assimilation in this country?
Oh, I'm against assimilation, not only for Jews, for anyone. I think
You're against?
Of course I'm against assimilation. I'm for integration, meaning the legal integration of a community, meaning that we all are equally entitled to the same rights and the same duties. Jew or Buddhist or Muslim or black or Hispanic, it doesn't matter. They're all the same. But as a person, as an individual, why give up a heritage that is 3,500 years old? Look, in this country, last year we both celebrated together the bicentennial and the Liberty Conference. Think about it. This year we celebrated the Constitution. Why? Because I heard on television 10 times, 50 times. This is a document which is a living document, and the society is living by its spirit and so forth. The Bible is 3,500 years old, and to some people it is still a living document. I always think about it. Again, we are proud of Lincoln. We are proud, of course, to abolish slavery. We have abolished slavery 3,000 years ago. The first law after the Ten Commandments is against slavery. Now, why give that up? It's foolish for a writer, for an artist, for a musician. It is foolish to give that up. There is so much in it. There is such an inspiration, such a wealth of ideas and sensitivities and memories in all that.
Why do you define assimilation as giving all of that up?
Because that is the meaning of assimilation, to me at least, or to us, to some of us. Assimilation.
You think it need be?
What else could it be?
Well, I'm really asking you of whether you can think in terms of a different, non-Israel-oriented leaning for...
Well, I was speaking about the Bible
Jews.
now, about Israel. I was speaking about the Bible, meaning about the Jewish tradition, about Jewish history, about Jewish consciousness, which to me is not opposed to a universal consciousness. Quite the opposite. I think